Uh, we are here today to play a game called Follow by Ben Robbins. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the game in a second. Ben Robbins is somebody who has designed a number of role-playing games. Probably the most famous he's known for is this game called Microscope. And he also has a game called Kingdom. All of these games are GM-less games. Everybody is kind of in the mix. There's not a referee. We kind of essentially referee ourselves with respect to the game. I'm going to just have us, even though we've been talking a little bit since it's now being recorded, I was going to have us just quickly go around and introduce ourselves. My name's Robbie. I go by the pronouns he, him, and I am a high school English teacher who teaches at Trinity Preparatory School in Winter Park, Florida. And I'm just going to work my way kind of clockwise around my screen. Go to Lolly next.
My name's Lolly DeRozier, and I'm a 7th grade biology teacher. I work at Holy Trinity Episcopal Academy on the east coast of Florida, and my pronouns are she, her.
Okay, and Aaron?
I'm Aaron DeRosa. I teach American literature to undergraduates and graduate students outside LA at Cal Poly Pomona, and I teach, I say, American literature. I said that already. It was already awkward. Okay.
And Hannah?
Hannah Messinger, she, her. I teach high school math at Trinity School on the Upper West Side of Manhattan.
Yeah, I was amused like when I saw you and then you said, oh, Trinity, and it's like, oh, we got like the Trinity connection going as well. Okay, and I'm going to start off by just talking a little bit about the game and go through what is sometimes referred to as CATS, the concept, aim, tone, and subject matter. So the game Follow kind of conceptually is a little bit hard to define because it doesn't really set a specific genre per se, or there's not really a specific setting for the game. That those things kind of get defined by the players. I would say that what is at the heart of the game is this idea of a quest, that you have a group of characters who are banding together to accomplish a mission or a objective or a quest, and that they are kind of working together in order to accomplish this. So the aim of the game is for us to come up with a set of characters. Everybody will have 2 characters, a major character and a minor character. And then as we work through the game, there will be a sequence of scenes that we will be setting up. We will have an objective in mind, but along the way, there will be kind of challenges that we will be facing that we will be trying to overcome with our characters. It's played in a sequence of rounds, and after every round, there's a mechanic to determine whether or not we are successful in meeting that challenge. Even if we fail to meet certain challenges along the way, that does not necessarily shoot us out of the water in terms of meeting our ultimate objective. It may make it even more difficult for us, but you know, we can, even if we fail to meet a challenge, we can still you know, continue marching forward to see whether we can meet our final objective. The tone of the game, that too could vary quite wildly, but I think that my sense of things and kind of what I was interested in doing was to choose a play set in the game called The Cure, which would involve us battling some type of disease of some sort. And that would, I think, kind of set us for a more serious course with the tone, which is not to say that there can't be kind of moments of humor and comic relief along the way, but it would kind of generally, you know, kind of set up like, okay, we're kind of serious about going after this objective. And as I said, you know, the subject matter, if you know, if we're going for the cure, you know, the kind of specific setting, and there are some alternatives that we will have before us in terms of the setting, but you know, the generally speaking, yeah, the subject matter is going to be a group of people who are in one way or another having to kind of confront some type of disease. Let's go to that, and let's just go around the table. It's 4 paragraphs. There are 4 of us. He says at the beginning here, says, read this page aloud to introduce the game. So we will follow his instruction. And Lolly, if you'll start with the first paragraph.
Follow is a game about working together to achieve a common goal. Slay the dragon, cure the disease, overthrow a tyrant, get your candidate elected. We'll pick a quest together to decide what kind of game we want to play.
Can we stay united and succeed, or will our differences tear us apart? We'll play and find out.
Okay, and then Hannah.
Follow isn't about us coming up with the best plan or a clever solution. It's about seeing what these characters do, for better or worse. We may even intentionally make bad choices because they seem like decisions our characters would make.
Okay, but even if we do everything perfectly, our quest may fail. As players, we can push for the outcome we want to see, but we cannot guarantee it. Our story may surprise us, and that's part of the fun. Okay, so we're going to do some kind of startup things now, and I have already kind of taken the first step, if it is okay with everybody, that we will play with the cure as our kind of play set that we will be using. There are, what he says is that after deciding the quest, kind of look at that, you know, quest play set, read the introduction on the start side aloud, and then answer the questions together to customize your quest. So the basic idea is we must cure this terrible disease. We are the doctors, researchers, lab workers, and administrators working on a solution. There are alternative settings, though, and he has those listed at the bottom of the page. So if anybody wanted to kind of go, I think that there's a sense initially that this is kind of like the contemporary world, you know, a situation which is, you know, close to the world that we live in. Although, you know, he has these alternative settings where we could think about this as a zombie infection, medieval monks fighting the plague, wizards breaking a curse, so on and so forth. Any thoughts about whether you're happy just keeping it in the more or less present tense, or whether you would like to kind of explore this in an alternate setting?
I don't have an objection to any of those settings. I have a particular love for zombies, but present day is interesting too. I think that there's a lot of potential drama in like sort of more mundane scenarios.
Okay. So Hannah, how about you? Are you?
I think I also don't have a strong inclination, but if I had any, it might be towards the present.
Okay, well then let's just keep it in the present, and it's, if we go to the section customize your quest together, you have a series of questions. What's the disease? Is it an illness that has vexed humanity for decades, or a virulent new plague? Is it deadly or just debilitating? Give it a name. I mean, I guess if we wanted to, we could just say, okay, it's the coronavirus, right? I mean, we could like take it with that, or if you wanted to go, I mean, there certainly have been, you know, even in recent history, other, you know, viral things that are going on, or we could, you know, just kind of invent some type of new virus.
I think I'd recommend, if we're staying in the present and trying to make this fairly contemporary, that we just stick with COVID-19 rather than trying to invent a disease from scratch and all of its various epidemiological consequences.
Okay.
I also say that I'm currently teaching Ling Ma's Severance, which is a zombie apocalypse disease novel set in New York. And so I'm in one of two modes right now, which is COVID-19 or zombie pandemic. So I'm also with Lolly on that front.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I guess I guess insofar as there are epidemiological characteristics that will be relevant, I suppose it's important that we either allow ourselves to take liberties with that which we don't know or there is current uncertainty about. Mm-hmm. Or I suppose part of it could be litigating the current state of evidence, which I sort of spend my time doing anyway, but could be done in the game setting. But it might need to just lend itself towards a sort of point of takeoff from the current universe where we know what we know and then it becomes a game. Insofar as where we work, I wonder if this is perhaps making assumptions about my fellow educators, but certainly I think that I inhabit a lot of my space in a pretty I know it's easy to feel like an earnest good guy because I'm a teacher in a classroom. And I think one of the things that's been most interesting and hardest about analyzing the current situation is thinking about hard trade-offs. And I think it'd be really interesting to role play as people who are more interested in return on investment. Mm-hmm. Because that matters. And I worry that the other elements of the game would lend itself to feeling like the obvious good guy rather than having to make hard trade-offs. But I may not be being creative enough with thinking about the role of a doctor, but the pharmaceutical one and worrying about wealth generation and trying to see the good in providing a service for exchange of goods and services feels really engaging to me.
Yeah, I was wondering about just in terms of getting a variety of different characters who would be maybe thinking about this in a bunch of different ways. Maybe take the setting to a town or a smaller size city, right? Where big enough that there were a lot of people being affected, but small enough that the few major business owners would definitely know the mayor and the members of the city council, right? That you would have it at least small enough that there's a sense of a kind of tight community, right, feel, so that you would have a business owner and he would not be simply some anonymous name to the members of the city council, but they would all, that they did their shopping at, right, this guy's clothing store or whatever, Yeah.
I like that. I like that idea. And I like the idea of thinking about people who are intimately involved with the situation, but not usually highlighted, like the custodial staff.
Yeah.
Those types of people that don't, that provide really important services, but don't get mentioned.
Okay, so let's maybe give our town a name, and I don't know. We could just set it at. I mean, it could be Georgia. It could be North Carolina. Some. I'm kind of liking maybe that it is a fictional town, but still within a state. Any town names coming to mind?
There's a movie that's called Synecdoche, New York.
Okay.
It's a play on Schenectady, but of course, Synecdoche, as the English teacher knows.
Okay, yeah. So why don't we do that? You want to just make it Synecdoche, New York, and it's upstate New York? Is that
just
okay?
As the game is standing in for the broader concepts?
Yeah. Okay. And then we need to, and so I think what we can say that to some extent those questions. I mean, where do we work? I mean, we're just part of this large town, small city, right? And we're all, I would say, probably residents in various capacities there. But we can be obviously kind of coming at this from different points of view. We need to decide then what makes our quest difficult. And on the play set, there are 6 items there, and we choose 2 of those. I think it's also okay if there's something else that we want to define as a difficulty, we can go with that. But what looks interesting to you in terms of the 2 specific things that are making this difficult?
Right away, number 5 jumps out at me. The idea that we don't have the best people or the best facilities. I think that's you know, that there's a lot of technology or, you know, geniuses in hiding that often save the day in dramas. And I would like to kind of play something that's a little more ordinary, where you have this really important issue to deal with, but you have completely ordinary resources.
Right. Okay.
I like 4.
The regulations and restrictions.
Yeah, I'm really drawn by the tension of what makes sense during peacetime versus what makes sense in a crisis.
Right.
I'm on board with both of those.
Okay. Yeah, and I agree. You know, and I think that, you know, the regulations and restrictions is something that you know, just but that also sometimes are, you know, can be things that seem kind of mundane, you know, but you know, definitely things that are kind of pressing on us right now in terms of what directions are kind of being given. Okay, let's make sure. So we have written those down, and I've gone on and added them to our virtual table. Okay, and the next step is to work together to kind of come up with our quote unquote fellowship. And we have a major character and a minor character that we will come up with. And I'll talk about the minor character in a second. I mean, both will be part of the kind of group that's playing out, and you will be perhaps flipping back and forth between playing your major character and your minor character. It says, as you make your characters complete each step together and discuss your choices so everyone knows what the other members of the fellowship are like, when you pick details about your character, you're telling the other players those are the same themes you want to explore in the game. And so you should come up with a name for your character, and your character should also have a role, which could be in our case, a profession, their place in the community, their place in you know, government, or you know, on the hospital staff, or what have you. And you know, there are on the Cure, there are some various suggestions for you know, character concepts, and you can take those, or you can also come up with your own. So what's going to happen now is we are the game plays out in a series of 3 rounds. There is some specific challenge that is at the heart of 3 rounds. One of us will for the first round decide upon a challenge, and if you go to the Cure sheet on the second page, they have a list of challenges there. So somebody will choose one of those and provide a brief explanation. Tell us what makes the challenge difficult and why we need to do it. And then the person who has decided on the first challenge will go on to pick the first player, and that would be the main character that they think would be the first to decide how to deal with this problem. And you cannot pick your own character. So you have to pick a character from another player who would you think would be kind of on the front line or be kind of in a place to be the first to decide how to deal with that problem. And then that player is going to kind of run with the ball, and they are going to create a scene that will kind of play out. And you know, I'll get to the kind of playing out of the scene you know, in a second here. But let's go with like the first challenge. Does anybody want to kind of look at that list and decide on something that looks?
Well, I think the treat a sudden outbreak kind of makes the most sense, like to get the story going, because it's a small town in upstate New York, kind of largely unconcerned with the, you know, the national news until it pops up locally.
Mm-hmm.
So there's
a where do you want to have that sudden outbreak taking place?
Like where in the town?
Yeah.
An elementary school.
Okay. And then since you're the one that's kind of setting up the challenge, some of this seems self-explanatory. I'm assuming that are we at the stage where the students are not at school anymore? The schools have been gone to the remote learning environment, or are we at a point where things had not been?
No, I think the school should still be in session.
Okay.
But the outbreak would be among the teachers.
And Lolly, you can then pass the ball here. Like, which of the main characters do you think is the one that would be?
Probably Lucas, because he works at the hospital. So he, out of these characters, the main characters, he would kind of be the first to be in the know about this sudden influx of teachers from the elementary school being admitted.
Okay. All right. So this is going to be Lucas then. And Aaron, what that means is that you can make a scene. You say who is there, where it's happening, and what is going on. He says it is more important to describe a situation that is clear to all the players than one that is particularly novel or interesting. The scene should be about your main character. Other characters may be present as well. By the way, generally you should not have your minor character in the same scene as your major character, because it gets difficult to kind of play that out. But and so you are free to bring in other characters on the table, whether they be major or minor here. You may also, if you have an idea for a character that you would like to invent, you can do that, and somebody else could, you know, just kind of step in to play that momentary character who appears. He says 2 to 3 characters per scene is ideal. Every player does not have to be in every scene. Normally you include other characters from your fellowship, but you can also invent outside character. And so you want to just kind of figure out, like, okay, what would the scene be? Where would it be taking place? What is going on in the scene, and who are the other characters that would be in that scene?
So I think Gail is probably the most makes the most sense here if we're talking about creating or responding to a sudden outbreak. You'd want doctors, politicians, and whoever's in charge of the school probably in this scene. I don't know if somebody wants to be a principal for a hot minute, or I think okay, so who's there? So Hannah, does that make sense? Do we want somebody else in the scene? Somebody to take part of the school?
Yeah, I'll be the principal.
Okay.
Nice.
Do you want me there or like on the phone?
I feel like we'd show up. I feel like
Okay.
we'd make a physical presence
Okay.
known.
Sure.
And where is the scene taking place? Is it at the school? Is it at the hospital?
I think we're in the parking lot of the school. Everything that's important always happens in the parking lot of the school.
Okay.
Definitely spoken by someone who doesn't teach in the New York City school.
Yeah. I feel like there's probably like no private space in a school, even the principal's office or the principal. I'm not going to speak for the principal. I think I feel as a head of security at Synecdoche General Hospital, I feel like my turf is managing who comes in and out. And so being in the parking lot is probably where I'd want us to be.
The parking lot of the school.
Because that's where we're just finding out about this outbreak.
Yeah. And so what you're going to do now is that you're going to do a short scene, say what your character says, does, and thinks, and you play to see what happens. He does say, with respect to the challenge, he says, never describe succeeding or failing at the challenge in a scene. We won't know if we win or lose until after all the scenes in this round have been played out. Okay. So we're in the school. We're in the school's parking lot, and Lucas, what are you doing there?
I guess I would know Gail by first name. Gail, I think we need to cancel school. We need to get these kids out of here. We need to make sure that they're separated from one another. We need to put them in quarantine. I'm hearing from my people that we need to set up stations around each person's house, and I don't have the authority to do that, but you do.
That sounds like a pretty big decision. What does our esteemed principal think?
So the principal's name is Smith. And she says, whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean just cancel school? Cancel school for how long? What are we supposed to do with all of these children? We have a VPK program here. Some of these littles, they are going to need daycare. Are their parents just supposed to stay home? What do you mean cancel school? What about our contact hours? I don't think you've really thought this through.
You're 100% accurate. I haven't thought this through. It's not my job to think this through. It's my job to make sure that everybody's safe. And right now, there's something going on, and I can't see it, and neither can any of you. And until we know what it is we're dealing with, we need to assume the worst. These are our children that we're talking about here.
Well, but it's, some of the teachers are sick. We've got a substitute pool to cover them. So, if we're how many, we're talking about 4 or 5 teachers at this point. Those classes will certainly be disrupted, but I'm not just going to close the school for hundreds of kids over 4 or 5 teachers. The union is going to have my throat.
How many, Mrs. Smith, how many teachers can you lose before you can't run school anymore?
Well, I mean, goodness, that's not a situation we've ever really thought about. I mean, we could combine classes. We might have to talk to the union about that, but we could combine classes for a little while. We certainly run summer camps with a lot fewer teachers than we have during the school year. So why don't we just give it a few weeks and see what happens?
In a few weeks, this is going to be way out of control. Every person that your students and teachers come into contact with is another potential site of outbreak. I don't think that you fully understand the gravity of this situation. And I think if if we can put some doctors in a room with your union, that perhaps they'll start to understand the gravity of this situation.
Yeah, Ms. Smith, I know that Lucas thinks that in general I don't prioritize security enough, but it's certainly what I'm hearing from the doctors at the hospital and some medical and data professionals in epidemiology is that it just might be the case that some of your teachers that seem healthy now are actually already sick, and that they might get sicker over the next few weeks, and that they might continue to infect other people. And I know that that's a situation we would really like to avoid. I wonder if we can talk to some of the stakeholders that you're understandably concerned would be frustrated by an immediate decision, and see if we can hash this out over the weekend and decide as soon as possible whether it makes sense, so that we don't have to close school in the middle of a week, if at all possible.
Well, if that's the one to go, that decision is going to come from your desk, not from mine. I can tell you that. I am not sending out a letter to all of these teachers and all of these families telling them that I close the school. If the city council wants to close the school, they can go ahead and do that, but that's going to come from your office.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If I take the flack for that decision, are you going to be okay with your union? Are your teachers gonna put up a big fuss, or are they going to be okay if it doesn't come from you?
Well, Gail, I'm not the one up for re-election. So, you do whatever you think is best.
I hear that. I think that the teachers have been a pretty loyal voting bloc for a long time, and I definitely want to have their backs. But I think in this case, we have to at least take seriously the notion that having their backs means keeping them safe from something we, as Lucas points out, that we can't see. But I'm glad that you feel like you're going to be okay if the decision isn't coming from you. So it's certainly not a decision I can make on my own. We'd have to take a vote of the city council, but I think if it's okay with both of you, I'd like to take this back to my committee.
Okay, and this might be in terms of like how a scene would come to an end. It says if you've shown some decision being made or revealed something about a character or the situation, that's a good scene. So what do you think? Is this? Do you want to keep playing it, or does that give it a?
No, I mean, I think that's they have I guess what's next is the city council meeting. Man, Principal Smith is a tremendous bitch.
Yeah, but I like the idea of her at least thinking, okay, passing the buck, or having somebody else who is gonna take the blame. That's good. So
yeah, Gail, you took on a lot there, Gail.
I did what?
You took on a lot there, taking responsibility for all this. I would have thrown that back in the principal's face.
Yeah.
Lucas would have thrown that back in the principal's face.
Yeah, I thought that. I thought you were gonna be mad at me. I was trying to ease tensions here. Trying to get real.
That's fair.
Yeah, this might be totally a bad decision from Gail's perspective, but I think she's trying to be a little bit of a hero. We'll see if that goes okay.
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 Definitely worked for Lucas.
Great.
In terms of the next scene, it goes around the table, and I'm just going to go to our virtual table. So, Aaron set that scene. So now it's going to pass to Lolly, and you'll set up a scene. Keep in mind what the challenge is. We want to try to keep the focus on the sudden outbreak, but we should have a scene now with Grady, and you can call one or more additional characters into the scene. Think about what a good setting for the scene would be and what would be happening in the next scene.
Okay, I think so. If Grady's at work, and she is manning the register at the pharmacy, and maybe Vivian comes in. Vivian is off her shift at the hospital, and she comes in to get some stuff, and maybe she and Grady have some conversation about what's been going on at the hospital.
Okay. All right, and would we, so we're meeting at the pharmacy, and
then can we have, maybe Zane is waiting in line behind Vivian to check out?
okay. And so we're in the checkout line, and Grady is there behind the register?
Yeah.
All right.
And
so,
she and Vivian kind of know each other, like casually, just kind of.
yeah.
Maybe they graduated high school together or something.
Yeah. So Vivian, right, has you know, her items that she's putting on, you know, for the checkout, and you know, Vivian, I think you see that Vivian is looking a little concerned, and a little harried. She is buying a 6-pack of Coors that she has up there as well, saying, "Well, I can't wait to get home to pop open one of those. It's been a tough day."
Oh yeah, what's going on? You look a little tired.
Well, yeah, I'm a little tired. I think I'm going to be a lot more tired as things go on. I don't know if you've heard about well, I mean, we've all heard about the coronavirus, but it seems like we may have some cases coming down in Synecdoche.
Beep. You think so? This is buy one get one. You want to get another one? No.
No, I think I'm okay.
Yeah, I keep hearing about that on the news, but God, I honestly can't stand to listen to them go on and on about it. It seems like at the top of every hour they're just saying the same thing.
Well,
everyone knows that there are already a bunch of cases here. Sorry, but it's true. There's just like no way. We have people driving in from the city all the time.
you said a lot of cases. How do you know that? I've just heard that there were some teachers that came down with it.
Sure, those are the symptomatic cases. But if you look at the data that people are spreading around and all the epidemiological reports, like, I don't know, we have no idea what percent is symptomatic. It might only be 1%. If you said there are 2 teachers, great. That might mean there are like 198 other people who just aren't symptomatic yet or might never be.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, so I think 1% symptomatic is a little bit overdoing it. We, you know, if that was the case, if there were so many asymptomatic, there's literally nothing we can do about it.
Or we could like actually get the city council to do something. Like, Grady, I feel like you always do this. You give up so fast whenever we have these conversations. Like, we can still, you just like we actually have to like Gail and her people to do something. If they knew the math that everyone is talking about on Twitter, then they would like see what's really important here.
Yeah, well, I can say that I've seen people walking around the hospital, like the administrators and stuff, that they're looking pretty concerned right now. They are kind of requiring us to do a thorough inventory once again of all of the equipment that we have, and they're clearly kind of concerned that something may be about to hit the fan, and we may not be ready for it at the hospital.
Oh, we're totally.
All right, but this isn't X-Files, okay? Like, there's no like conspiracy to hide information. These things have to go through channels. Information has to be reviewed. They have to do data modeling. It's just everybody just needs to calm down.
You want to make a bet?
A bet on like
how many cases are there in a week?
Oh, I don't know. How many cases are there now, Vivian?
Yeah, well, I get some information from inside the hospital, and they think in Synecdoche now, with the most recent cases, that we may be up to a few dozen But you know, the last group with these teachers, that really has put people on edge. I tell you, because they're all kind of in close proximity to each other, and that makes it seem to everybody like it's starting to get spread around by people within the community. It's not good.
I bet it quadruples in a week.
Quadruples.
Yeah, what do you think, Grady? You want to bet me on it?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I'll bet you all the Mucinex in the pharmacy.
I'll take it.
And Vivian says, well, you know, I don't think I'll enter into the betting right now. I've put my money down on Coors, and I think that'll be good for me. Yeah.
I'm with her.
Yeah. And so, is that a good place for the scene to end with the bet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next scene will pass to me, and this is going to be Cooper. And I think I want to have a scene. I think it would be good to get Cooper and Gail together. You know, Cooper has heard about kind of the outbreak, and that there's going to be a emergency meeting of the council. So let's put maybe this will be a scene on the phone. I'm calling Gail. I'm also wondering about, like, okay, Aaron, before I do this, tell me a little bit about Ray, the local financial analyst.
Yeah, I just changed that. Too many college students in this scenario. Local financial analyst, just somebody who, you know, probably does taxes, helps people with their taxes, but also like will invest people's money and stuff like that. Probably interested, you know, keeps track of local markets and or keeps track of global markets, and is, you know, fairly in tune with the economy and making sure that the Dow Jones Industrial Average always increases.
All right. Well, how does this sound? We'll do a three-way conference call between Cooper and Gail, and I have Ray in on the conference call as well, just because I'm concerned about the idea of not just the school closure, but this could, you know, we know that other places they're talking about closing down certain businesses and things like that. And Ray, I'm having you on the call just as a third party, because you know, Gail knows me, but she also knows I have like a very set, you know, specific business interest in mind, and I want to have like you there as like a third voice who has some expertise in terms of the financial situation and what kind of economic impact you know, starting to close down schools and other things would have before this council meeting.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so I call you up, Gail, and say, hi, Gail. This is Cooper, and do you mind if I put Ray on the line as well? Just want to kind of talk about the upcoming meeting and some of the concerns I have, but I wanted to have Ray here because he might be able to kind of talk to us about like other kind of financial impacts of what's going on. Yeah, he's ready for the call.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, this is Ray.
Great. Happy to have you.
Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, so Gail, I've heard about what's going on down at the elementary school, and I know that you are getting ready to meet with the council soon. what is your sense of what is going to take place there at that council meeting?
Yeah, we're pretty concerned with there being a local outbreak when we thought we mostly had it under control. And we think it's probably the case that any context in which people, especially adults, are having a lot of contact with each other and with shared surfaces is something to be on the lookout for. And elementary school teachers obviously like hang out in lounges all the time. And so we're concerned that that's just not a safe place for them anymore. And that if they've been going to local businesses, then this outbreak might already be pretty widespread. And so we're looking into shutting down, the question of whether we should shut down non-essential businesses.
Yeah. And I guess also whether you're going to shut down schools. I tell you, even shutting down schools would be a big hardship on me. I've got a lot of people working in my gas stations who have kids that go there, and they when I kind of was passing through today, they this news has kind of leaked out, and they're worried that if schools start closing like they have in other places around New York, that they don't know what they're going to do, because they don't that they work when their kids are at school, and if the kids are at school, they're really worried about the childcare and all that stuff.
Hi, this is Ray. Can you hear me? Hi. Cooper's exactly right here. I don't think we understand the impact of how this just ripples out from one school to the entire economy. I mean, we're not just talking about gas stations here. We're talking about Starbucks. We're talking about Best Buy. We're talking about everything. Everything's impacted by this. And I mean, just look at the economic indicators. I mean, you close down schools. You're talking about closing down the entire town, and you better know that.
Yeah, let's talk about what that would mean for you, Cooper. I'm not out to get your business, you know that, I hope. And look, I actually think you're in a pretty good position here. People are still going to need gas. People who have essential jobs and need to commute to the city are still going to need to do that. So I want to be here for you. What would you need to be able to keep your employees employed, but making sure that your business gets cleaned and sanitized as often as possible, and that people aren't within 6 feet of each other?
Well, look, I've got a lot of
the problem solve with you.
Yeah, well, I got a lot of employees on the payroll, and I'm really worried about them. I mean, in addition just to my, how the stations in general are doing, but if my stations start to struggle, right, I think about a lot of employees that have been with me for a long time. I tell you what, though, I have no problem with increased sanitation measures. I have no problem if you or the members of the council or the hospital kind of give me, procedures that they want me to follow. I'm on board with all of that. Now, if you, where I start to get really nervous, though, is if you're talking about, right, I have some of my stations have little restaurants that are there, and I'm really nervous about what's gonna, if we're making this determination between essential versus non-essential. My business is multifaceted, and it is pumping gas at the pump, but it's about going inside. I mean, I get a lot of my money from the convenience store operation, from the some of them have car washes, right?
I'm going to cut you off. And honestly, maybe you can help us out with this. I don't think you're going to get people coming to those restaurants no matter what decision the council makes. People are going to start to get scared. They're going to stop going out. They're going to start locking themselves down at home. There's just not, I don't mean to take a hard line about this, but from what I'm hearing, there's just not a situation in which your restaurants are okay over the next, couple weeks. It's not me that's going to get your restaurants. your customers aren't going to show up. I'm sorry.
This is Ray again. Yeah, I think that Gail is right here. Those restaurants aren't gonna be. You're gonna be serving 1 or 2 customers a day, and I think what you really need to be focused on here, Cooper, is seeing how they're gonna support you through these lean times. Not getting business, not getting business as usual, but getting your beak wet, getting, how's insurance gonna work for you? Where's you gotta cover your ass. And here I'm just speaking as a friend, not as this isn't markets here. This is you and me, buddy. But you gotta watch yours, and Gail, you gotta watch his too.
Yeah, look, if it's the gas station stuff, if you can do that pivot to really trying to get the gas business running smoothly, running leanly, maybe laying off some people, I can support you with that. We can do some tax, we can talk about some tax cuts, we can talk about some small business loans, but this restaurant, you got to give it up.
Well, I guess, tell you what, that's really tough on me. The gas business has not been great. The prices have been going down. I know a lot of people are cheering about that, but I tell you, that has already put the pinch on me. I'm going to try to go back to my books again, try to figure out, how I can kind of get more lean. But yeah, I do fear, with if those restaurants are taken out of the picture, that's going to be painful.
I want to actually push you a little more, Cooper. I would love your support when we come out. If we come out on Monday and we start closing businesses, I would love you to be out there saying that was the right move. Because if people get sick at your restaurants because one of your employees coughed, and those I've had a burger at one of your joints. Those places are tiny. I'd really love for you to be out there supporting me.
Well, I'd like to support you, Gail, and we've always had a pretty good relationship, I feel, and I don't really want to jeopardize that. So I'm going to see what you do at that council meeting, and if I see that you're kind of putting up a good faith effort to kind of do what you can to support me, I'd be up for some reciprocity here.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, this is Ray again. You gotta follow the money, Gail. You gotta make sure that you're supporting these businesses. If you're gonna ask them to sacrifice, the government's got to sacrifice too.
The economics are mostly beyond me, but I'll talk to the committee about it.
Don't sell yourself short. You know more about the economy than you think. But thank you for listening.
Okay, and I think that's probably a good place to cut, and then Hannah, we'll finish it up with you. So we have another scene with Gail.
Okay. Let's look at the team. We haven't had Jason yet. Okay. So this is going to be our last scene in this challenge. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. Let me think. Can I think what I want to do is have a press conference announcing the decision post council meeting with Vivian and Lucas as my representatives from the hospital and from the medical community. And then I think I actually would be totally up for leaving it up to you, Lolly, which of your characters should be in the audience, and if you want to ask questions or push back on anything, unless you want more of my thoughts on that. But I think you could, it's up to you which one, or I'm happy to pick.
Yeah, you can pick.
Yeah.
But probably either one of them would be there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And maybe just like depending on how the scene goes, it could even like if they have different like needs or questions.
Okay.
Cool. Great. So, good evening, good people of Synecdoche. The council has just voted, and we want you all to be the first to hear about the new decisions we're making. You've heard about the outbreak at the elementary school, which has concerned us greatly, and we want to make sure that community spread doesn't continue unabated throughout our town, and we want to make sure that we are keeping people safe while making sure that people's worries about their jobs and their children and their futures are well taken care of. Just to impress upon all of us the seriousness of the situation, I have Vivian here, a respiratory technician from the hospital, to talk about the cases that she's seeing at the hospital and the severity thereof. So I'm going to pass it off to Vivian for a quick case report.
Yeah, so we have done a thorough inventory of our medical equipment at the hospital. For now, we feel very confident that we have what we need to handle the current cases. We obviously are concerned and are monitoring the increase in the number of people who are coming down. I can report that right now the only cases that we have seen have not involved the pupil populations of the schools at this point. It is right now we have some teachers who have tested positive, and we are monitoring them carefully. Of those teachers, one of them has been hospitalized, but the others are seem to be holding up pretty well. We are monitoring the one teacher who is hospitalized. I would just assure the people of Synecdoche that the hospital is in full-on planning phase right now to make sure that we are keeping apprised of what the situation is, and that we will be equipped to kind of deal with new developments as they might arise. But I would say that all of the recommendations coming out in terms of kind of limiting contact, maintaining good hygiene, washing hands, that is not anything to be laughed at, right? Those are kind of serious precautions that we should all be taking now.
Thanks, Vivian. And to that effort, it's really imperative that despite our current understanding of the number of cases and our ability to handle them, that we don't allow the case rate to increase exponentially as it has in other places. And so to that end, we are asking anyone who can work from home to do so. And we are taking the step of shutting down non-essential businesses, which you can read about in the plans that will come out shortly, whether your business counts as essential or not essential. But we have enough space and we have enough of our great medical staff for the cases we have, but we just cannot survive having a massively increased caseload. That said, for the cases that are already present in our community and are only waiting to become symptomatic, we are rearranging our hospital to have more space in the COVID ward. And we're going to have Lucas, the security guard at the hospital, speak to some of the efforts to make sure that the hospital is in top condition.
Thank you, Gail. Yeah, we are trying to manage. We're trying to manage our patients. The important thing, what we've seen elsewhere, is the overwhelming of resources, and so we're trying to space that out. We're setting up a temporary location in the parking lot. We've got some because parking lots are very important. And so we've got that going on. We're maintaining social distancing, and we're setting up some guidelines for local businesses, essential businesses to follow suit, try to limit the contact that you have with the people around you. Is there something more that you'd like me to speak to, Gail or Vivian?
No, I really appreciate it. I just want to emphasize that we as a council are really taking the concerns of everyone seriously. We've been talking to the medical community, we've been talking to the business community, we've been talking to the educational community. We have a small surplus from last year, so we were able to put aside a small fund. We will set up a portal if you are experiencing unemployment or your small business is experiencing reduced or completely shut down customer base as a result of our decisions. We're going to have a portal where you can apply for some loans and some unemployment insurance. That money is finite, so please, as a town, if you know that you can stay afloat for the next couple weeks, we would urge you.
So Jason shoots his hand up. Jason is in the audience and he's raised his hand. Yeah, so we're now, the three of us are now here to answer questions. So I see someone in the audience. Yeah, like so, you know, I do home repairs, and if I don't work, I don't get paid. So you're telling me you're going to shut down the whole town because one teacher got sick? And we got to like stay away from each other? You got 300 of us here in a room to tell us we got to stay away from each other? Something doesn't seem right with this.
Yeah, sorry, what was your name?
My name's Jason.
Jason, I hear that sounds, it can sound unreasonable on its face, but we don't want one teacher, in fact, it's many more than that, but we don't want just a few teachers to turn into more and more and more, to be 2 and 4 and 8 over the coming weeks. If you, like I said, if you are having hardship, I hope that you'll apply to our portal for a loan so that we can keep you afloat over the next amount of time. If you are able to pivot your business to making sure that you're working on really essential projects, making sure that people have heating, since we're having this bizarre cold snap, things like that, that's okay. But if you need a loan, we're going to be here for you. Any other questions from the audience? We are in this together, and we will get through it together. I hope to be able to open up the town. You know, we think that the incubation period and the amount of time that it takes for someone to recover is just a couple days. So I'm hoping to recover. I'm hoping to be able to open up the town back to normal in just a couple weeks.
Okay. And should we cut it there?
Sure.
Yeah, I was wondering whether like Vivian would I feel like, you know, Vivian in this situation would, publicly is trying to kind of be like, oh, we got, things planned. She probably is like really actually very, very worried about like that situation. She might, like, after the press conference, have a brief conversation with Gail saying, look, things, are okay now, but if we get added pressure, Gail, boy, it's going to be, really tight with medical supplies. Yeah.
She also said this ridiculous thing that she can open up the town in 2 weeks. Presumably Vivian knows is ridiculous and like a stupid promise to make. She like cannot hold.
Okay, so what we do now, that brings the first round to an end, and there's now a little mechanic that comes into play that will have consequences for us. I have a set of red dice, and we can call these gold dice. And what I do is I put one of each into the bag. And then I'm going to read a statement, and we're going to do this in the chat, okay? So I'm going to read a statement, and it says, if your main character is unhappy about the path that the fellowship, our group, has taken, hold one red stone. if your main character actually wants the quest to fail, hold 2 red stones. Otherwise, hold no stones. So in the chat, and don't hit return yet. We'll do this like 1, 2, 3. Everybody reveals, but you want to go with no stones, meaning that you get 1 stone if your main character is unhappy, 2 stones if they want the quest to fail, and otherwise you say no stones.
Forgot to ask Cooper what he thought of the press conference, so now I don't know. I don't know if he's happy.
All right, so does everybody have that ready to go? So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we have 2 stones from Lolly, so we get 2 more red ones that go in here. And then next it says, as a player, do you think the fellowship did what was necessary to succeed at the challenge? Hold white if yes, red if no. So you're either going to type gold or white if you think yes. And this is as a player. Did the fellowship do
or as a player, like not as a character?
Correct, right. As a player. Okay, so it's going to either be red if you think that the fellowship did not do what they needed to do, or gold, they did do it. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so everybody got that. So we put 4 into the bag. So we now have varying numbers of red and gold in here. And then I'm going to draw these out. I draw 2 out. And the first one, if I can get at these, there you go. The first one is gold. And the second one is gold.
Nice.
Which is great for us because with two gold, we win the challenge. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, he has different permutations. If you drew the first one red and the second one gold, that would mean you lose 1 character but win the challenge.
Oh.
If you draw a gold and then a red, you lose 1 character and lose the challenge. And if they're both red, a character betrays the fellowship and is lost, and you lose the challenge. But this we, I think we came ahead on the curve in this one. So we actually win the challenge. So at least for the outbreak at the elementary school, that was successfully dealt with. Okay.
Okay.
And then we go to our second challenge, and this would be Lolly. You will not be deciding the second one because you decided the first one. But does somebody else?
Okay. Then I'm gonna take a 1-minute break. I'll be back.
Okay. But does somebody else looking at the challenges want to choose one of those?
I think I want to say, and this seems like totally possible that it's my fault or something, but like insufficient conflict between characters or something. Like, I think because I'm a politician, I'm like trying to achieve a lot of common ground, but I wonder if there's a challenge we could pick that would elicit more tension or more conflict where people have different preferences or values.
Yeah, so
I think maybe deal with the safety failure within our facility. What went wrong? I think maybe people just aren't obeying the guidelines. Restaurants didn't shut down, and people are protesting in the streets.
Liberate Synecdoche.
Liberate Synecdoche.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Or like, yeah, or like it's 2 weeks later and people are like holding Gail to that promise, and that's just like not working out. Yeah, that's interesting.
Or the other one here is fix the terrible side effect our treatment causes. So maybe we're 1 month in and businesses are suffering, and kids are antsy and listless, and yeah. I think I think the latter is probably more interesting and draws in more people than a security officer.
Okay, so we're gonna do fix the terrible side effect. Our treatment causes, and this is job loss, child care,
Ill will, general distress, and unrest. Distrust.
Okay. So Aaron, we'll put you as the one to have proposed that. So Lolly, we have this challenge: fix the terrible side effect. You know, that we're kind of moving ahead in time, and there now has been kind of all sorts of repercussions of the closing down of non-essential businesses and schools, and that things are kind of boiling a little bit in Synecdoche. And Aaron, which character do you want to propose?
Also, Aaron, actually, do you want to incorporate both? Like maybe there's also a protest movement, like as part of the general unrest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I think that probably the place to start would be with either Grady or Cooper. I think it would be interesting for this challenge to move from those affected to those who are ostensibly still in charge. So let's do Grady. Let's start with Grady, if that's all right.
Okay. So Grady would still be working because she works at the pharmacy, right? So presumably that's essential. Are we waiting on me? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So you now have you're the first of the scene. So it's going to be a scene with Grady, but you can decide, you know, where that scene is going to be, who else is going to be involved, and what it's
okay. So this scene is going to be in the parking lot of the pharmacy, and it is the end of Grady's shift, and she is sneaking masks and rubbing alcohol from the pharmacy into her car. And
Lucas wants a piece of that action.
So all right, so Lucas is driving by, or maybe pulling into the pharmacy. So maybe Lucas is pulling into the pharmacy right at the moment that Grady is sort of trundling out to her car with a whole bunch of packages.
I think that's perfect.
Okay, so there we are, and then maybe who else is in the scene? Let's say Vivian is walking out of the pharmacy to her car at the same time. She's bought something and is walking out to her car.
She's like graduated from beer to
the Mucinex. All the Mucinex.
Yeah, I don't know. What are the blue laws in New York? I don't know.
Oh yeah, we have to settle our bet.
That's right.
All right. So this is Grady, Lucas, and Vivian. All right.
I think Lucas is probably the first to sort of pull up alongside Grady's car.
Yeah,
And
I'm standing next to the car, and I've got the passenger side open, and I'm putting some things into the footwell of my car.
Yeah. I think like a security officer, I've parked behind you so that you can't get out unless I move.
Okay.
Total power move here. Grady, what?
Whoa! God, Lucas,
Oh,
you scared me to
sorry.
death. You
Sorry.
creep up on me like that, and I quickly like stand up and like close the door to my car.
How's work going for you recently?
Well, things have been pretty crazy. Jane got sick last week, and so I've had to cover a lot of her hours. I've been pulling double shifts a lot, so yeah, I'm exhausted. I'm gonna get out of here. Dude, could you move your car? You're totally blocking me in.
So I see you've got some boxes in there. I'm just curious. What are you stocking up on? Should I be stocking up on something? I mean, you're in the know. What are people? What's gonna be scarce in 3 days?
Oh, I don't know, man. Like, just probably refill your prescriptions. Look, you're being really pushy and weird, and maybe you don't need to know how many maxi pads I just put in my car. So back off, rent a cop, move it along.
Vivian comes walking over at this point and sees, this car blocking in, blocking in Grady and says, Grady, is everything okay?
And Grady is agitated. Like she's more belligerent than she normally is, and is clearly like agitated. Oh, hey Vivian, look, I'm just trying to get out of here, and Lucas is just rolled up on me, thinking he's still chief of police. Whatever. I got to get home. My mom's waiting for me at home. I call her every night. I'm already late. I'm going to catch a ration of crap from her if I don't call her, especially now that we're not allowed to go anywhere. That nightly FaceTime call is really, really important to her. So I got to go.
Yeah. And Vivian looks at Lucas, says, Lucas, what are you doing? Hemming her in like that.
Lucas just throws his hand up and he says, look, it's just a force of habit. I was just asking a question, just trying to figure out what's going on. I just asked her how she was, and she just unloaded on me. Don't mean to cause any stress here. Just asking a simple question, how you're doing.
And Vivian looks over at your car that's blocking her in and says, well, you have a really strange way of just asking somebody questions.
It's a force of habit. You learn this in when you work in security.
All right. Well, if your spidey sense is sufficiently done tingling, I'd like to go. And I'm like, and Grady is like visibly sweating at this point. Like,
he says, absolutely. You both take care of yourselves now. And he's gonna pull off.
Yeah, and when after he pulls off, Vivian says to Grady, like, what was his problem?
And so I kind of look at the ground a little bit, and I look really guilty, and I was like, Vivian, I thought he was totally gonna bust me. I paid for it all, but I know we're supposed to be rationing some of the medical supplies, but I'm just trying to stock up at home. My mom, she has the COPD, and I'm so scared that she's going to get sick. And I mean, I don't have any resources. I don't know what to do. Like all I can do is keep her from getting sick. There's, my insurance here barely covers what I need. I don't think it's going to cover what she needs if she has to go to the hospital. They're overloaded already.
I don't know what to tell you, Grady. I can tell you, I'm kind of at ground zero, and I can tell you that, the stuff about rationing is right. I mean, we are already stretched thin at the hospital, and there are not adequate supplies that we need. And I feel terrible about your mom, but I mean, you've got to think about. I mean, you got to think about your mom, yes, but you got to think about this community too.
Oh, come on. None of these people are going to stick their necks out for me and my mom. We're on our own.
Look, let me tell you this. The situation is a lot worse than what is being reported right now. And the situation with supplies is a lot worse at the hospital than what they're saying. Look, if things get desperate for you or your mom, give me a call, okay? I'm working at the hospital, and I will do personally whatever I can to help you all out.
All right, so you're telling me if my mom has to get admitted, you're going to take care of her, right?
I will personally do what I can at the hospital to help your mom.
All right, where are you parked?
And I point a few cars down.
All right, so I walk around to the passenger side of the door and I open it and I take out the packages, and it's a bunch of bottles of rubbing alcohol and a bunch of disposable masks. And I kind of I do take one little box of masks out and throw it on the seat, but then I take the other bags out and I'm like, all right, consider this my donation to the hospital.
And with that, Vivian reaches into her groceries and pulls out a couple cans of beer and says, "Here, you may need some of these tonight."
Yeah, you're damn right I will. But I laugh about it, and so I'll walk over to Vivian's car with her and put the stuff in her car.
Okay. And is that a good place to end that one? Okay. Cool as it can.
Asking questions.
All right. So I have the next scene. Cooper is going to and I do want to, I'm looking at time, so I want to maybe try to kind of get some short scenes in here. And I think, why don't we do a little scene with Cooper and Ray? Okay. And I've called Ray, I've called you over to one of my stations, which is where I have my main office set up. It's like my where I do all my kind of bookkeeping work, and I've kind of called you in to give me some advice. Okay. And it'll be a face-to-face meeting, though. I say, look, I want to, or at least with the desk between us. But it's like, I've got to have a serious talk with you about the financial situation that's happening. Okay. And
I come in and I shake your hand.
and I have you sitting down opposite of me at my desk, and I say, Ray, look, I took your advice, and I have shaved off what I can from this business, but I tell you, it is not getting it's not getting better. And I've got employees that I have known for a long time who, well, I mean, some of them I'm having to furlough. I mean, I told all of them that they will have their job once this passes by, but that I can't keep them on the payroll. I've got other employees who are honestly getting scared to come to work. And, I'm having, people calling in. Sometimes they're calling in sick. Sometimes they just flat out are saying that they don't feel safe anymore. What am I to do?
Listen, Cooper, we talked about this. We saw this coming, and look, there are no atheists in foxholes, and there are no free marketers in the middle of a global pandemic. You gotta stick it to Gail. You gotta get in there. You gotta get your money. You don't want to get sued by your people. Like you gotta take care of them. You gotta make them feel like they're safe. But you need that money. That's what the government's there, and everybody's getting their beak wet. You gotta get your beak wet too.
So okay, I do feel like I have been supportive of Gail, and she recognizes that. But I mean, how exactly would you, like, what do you think would be the best way to approach her?
You got two options. You can. You say you have a good relationship with her?
Yeah,
I mean, she'd listen to you if you got her on the phone?
I think she would, yeah.
You need a bailout, man. You need the money, and you need Synecdoche to bail you out. You need to protect yourself. There's no other way through this. This is going to go on for another month, and you can't handle that. And if she doesn't listen, well, you got to do what you got to do to put food on your table. You got to do what you got to do to get this economy running again. You're the one making this economy run.
Yeah, well, what you say now, I think gives me a plan of attack. She said flat out when she was first talking, 2 weeks. She said 2 weeks, and now you're saying
she said 2 weeks.
Yeah, and now you're saying a month, and I think you're right. This is going on far longer, and will go on far longer than what she was first telling me. So
you know what you do, and this isn't a professional recommendation, but siphon the gas from her car. See how she gets to work. That's what I would do. Just saying.
Yeah. Cooper rolls his eyes and he says, I don't think that's the best way to get to her, but I know pressure points that I can use to kind of get some action that will hopefully, I'm not looking to, put money in my pocket, but I need to ride out this storm, and I'm going to need all the help I can get from the city to do that.
Well, you're the businessman. I'm just the numbers man. I sit behind a computer and I just do some automated clicking. That's my job. So you do what you got to do. But okay. Gail is the linchpin. You got to get to Gail.
Gail is the key. Yep. And I think with that, we'll bring it to a close. But clearly, like Cooper is thinking about the kind of putting some added pressure on Gail. So Hannah, the turns to you now for a scene.
Well, my plan was to have Zane and Jason swap conspiracy theories, but probably
that'd be cool.
All right. So like Zane's bored, like walking around the city, sees Jason working on something, like outside the house, some house, hangs out, comes and sits.
Well, maybe it's Zane's house. Maybe like there's a leak, some kind of leak or
right.
And so Jason is there working on something.
Great. Awesome. So I come out of the house and see you working, and I'm really bored because I have nothing to do. So I'm gonna just sit on my stoop and kind of watch you work for a while. And then maybe say something like, hey man, why don't you wear a mask while you work?
A mask? Yeah, I'm supposed to be out here wearing a mask. You know how hot those things are? Whatever. I got a good immune system.
Okay. So I was just reading. Okay. Do you know what a cytokine storm is?
A what?
Yeah. So like actually, okay. People are saying that you die because like the virus infects you and the virus kills your cells, but that's just like not true at all. It's all about the immune system, right? If your immune system is too strong, then actually that's what kills you. You should be wearing a mask, man. And like, actually, like these like N95s that everyone's talking about, those don't even work. Those are like mostly coming from China. They're like giving us bad masks. You like have to get the real ones.
Wait a minute. What do you mean a real mask? Like they're out here telling us handkerchiefs are okay.
Yeah, that's like obviously ridiculous. It's like,
so where are we supposed to get these real masks from? You think they're holding out on us?
well, like, look, the CDC is obviously like has no idea what it's doing. Like South Korea is the only place that can do it. So if you get masks from them, or you can get them on the dark web.
Lady, you're talking about South Korea and the dark web. I got trouble getting stuff from Ace Hardware.
Yeah, that's like nothing in this town works. That's why you have to go outside. Like, and then there's like, I haven't even gotten started on the zinc and the like hydroxychloroquine. I mean, like, look, like this town has no idea what it's in for.
Look, I think this is all a big smokescreen. This is they're tanking the economy on purpose so they can come in later and save the day just in time for elections.
Oh, shit. Shit, you think Gail knows something?
This is so far above local government or Gail or those hospital administrators. We're just small potatoes to these people. They don't care what happens to us out here.
I'm sorry, that's not what anybody is saying on Twitter.
The what?
On Twitter, it's where all the scientists are. You think this is a hoax?
Wait a minute. The scientists are on a place called Twitter?
They talk, you gotta get it right from the source. Cause like the news is totally lying to you. I totally agree.
Well, listen, I don't know what the Twitters are. I was away for a little while, but all I'm saying is I'm barely hanging on by a thread, and nobody in charge seems to be super concerned about it. And I think it's because they got a plan, and they're in it for themselves. And it's, with this election coming up, things are getting real contentious, and I think that they're going to try to play the hero. Look, some people are getting sick, but it's flu season. People get sick all the time. They're saying a lot of people are asymptomatic. What does that mean? That just sounds to me like they're what, they're supposed to be sick, but they're not really sick. Well, if you're asymptomatic, hooray, that just means you don't got any symptoms. Great.
Look, man, you got to get on Twitter. I don't know how to explain this to you. I'm not good at this. Can I get you a mask? I think we have some in the back.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
I come out with this like ridiculous like cosplay like gas mask. It's like not even medically effective, but just like looks terrifying. That's wears this around town. It will just like sow more and more upsetness and distrust.
I take it from you, and I'm like holding it up, and I'm looking inside. Is that glitter glue?
Look, I only wore it once, but like it works. Look, I have one too, and I like go out and get one too. I'm like, come on, will you just like wear it with me if we go out around town? Come on, you're going to all these houses. They're like old people. They'll be really reassured if you wear this mask.
Lady, I don't think anybody's gonna let me in their house wearing this thing. But thanks
Please.
A lot. You know what? I'll keep it in the truck.
All right. All right. Thanks. It was good talking to you.
Yeah, he turns back, like firmly turns his back on her and goes back to work.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, I've seen all sorts of. I haven't seen the full-on gas mask, but I've seen a variety of different kind of masks people are kind of coming up with to wear. All right, so then, Aaron, you have the last scene here, this round.
So if our challenge is to fix the terrible side effect our treatment causes, I think we need to end with some kind of virtual press conference. I think that we need, I think Gail needs to be able to defend herself. I think that either either Vivian or Lucas. I think we need 2 people in the audience, though. Let's do Gail, Lucas, Grady, and Cooper.
Okay.
And we'll have and Grady and Cooper will be our sort of like
instigators.
Interlocutors, instigators. That's much better. Yes. Yeah.
And
How
Lucas,
are we running this?
Audience too, or are you in the press conference with me?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
Are you in the audience or in the press conference?
No, I'm with you. I've been supporting you from the beginning.
You're with her?
I'm with her. Yeah, so let's do, I think I guess I'll convene the conversation. Thanks everybody for showing up. I know that this has been difficult. I want to, report some numbers first. He cites off some numbers. I think what's important to show, he throws a graph up on there, and he says, is that the efforts that we've taken to create safety in the hospital first and in the community at large have been working. As you can see, we've been bending the curve so that we're not overwhelming our hospitals. We've got the resources that we need, and we're getting more. And I think people have been really good on the streets. He's obviously lying, like he's trying to paint this picture. And people have been, great on the streets, and they've been, really kind to one another. And I think it speaks to our community's resilience and fortitude in these difficult times. I'd like to introduce Gail, our councilwoman, who'd like to speak to us about the ongoing efforts to protect us.
Thanks so much, Lucas. So I just want to commend the people of this town for everything they've done, for the amount of social distancing I see taking place, and for all the sacrifices that people have made. I have never pretended to be an epidemiologist or an economist, but I have those people in my staff and people of the community who I'm talking to. And from what I'm hearing, there's just widespread agreement that we just need to continue the lockdowns, that we're bending the curve and it's working. But this is exactly the point where you don't want to let up, because we're at our peak. Small businesses, the Small Business Administration of our town is really happy with the loans. The portal is working perfectly smoothly. I've heard no complaints. And I know that the childcare situation is hard, but I hear that there are a lot of really good ideas on Pinterest. And so my understanding is that as a community, we've just really come together in this time, and I feel confident that we'll be able to open up in another 2 weeks.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Uber, please. This is, I just want to let everyone know, this is one of our staunch leaders in our business community. He's been a supporter for a really long time. I look forward to seeing what he has to say.
Well, unfortunately, I don't think you're going to like what I have to say. I have been meeting with local business owners, and in a way, I count myself personally fortunate. I have a large enough operation that I've been able to. Now I've had to send a lot of people home on furlough, but I've been able to kind of continue stumbling along. But look, listen, I have listened to business owners, and some of them no longer have their businesses. And you told us this was going to be a 2-week problem, and it is going on far longer than 2 weeks. Look, I've been a part of this community for a long time. My family has been here for a long time. But look, Synecdoche, it's fine to kind of talk in high terms about how we're coming together and things are working. But I'd have to tell you, some things ain't working. And I feel, and even more, I would say some of the business owners I've talked to who have had to really close up shop feel that they have just been hung out to dry. And, you know, people say that they can't, that they're a non-essential business or that they can't work. And for some of them now, that is just a death sentence.
So I have to say that this is the first time I'm hearing of this. My connections to the business community have been giving me good news. So, you know, maybe you and I can have a meeting later, but, you know, this is a once in a century situation and no one could have been prepared for it. And everyone knows that Synecdoche is not rolling in cash. It's true that our small business loan fund ran out. We are looking for other places in the budget that we can pull from, but you know, I don't know what you want me to do. I don't know if you want me to pull money from the teachers' pensions. I don't know if you want me to pull money from unemployment insurance, but you know, the businesses will come back. They'll come back in just a few weeks. As soon as we open up again, people will go back. People will go back, but they have to think that they're safe. No one's going to go back to your restaurants, Cooper, if they think they're still unsafe. I'm looking out for you.
Listen, you say a few weeks, but you know, I've heard your timelines before, and they don't really match up with reality. You know, I don't know what you can do, but what I'm saying is that you've got to do something. You know, if your small business fund is out, but there needs to somewhere you have got to kind of scrape some money together to help out.
Conference. Lucas, can you do something about him? Can we just cut this?
Oh, sorry, Cooper. Thank you for your comments. I think your concerns are well founded. I think that we need to look at all those options, but I think that Gail is right that the safety of our town is our biggest priority, and I think that you believe that too. That you want your employees and your customers to both be safe, and that you would never intentionally put them in harm's way just to you know, make a buck. So I thank you. I know that you're a good member of this community, and you are doing your best, just like we are doing our best to make sure that that things get back to normal.
So at this point, Grady just pops up out of her seat and she's like, doing our best. Listen, I've been working 12-hour shifts at that pharmacy. Nobody's staying home. I have just as many customers as before, if not more. People are out all the time. Half these people aren't wearing masks. We're, you know, like, you've shut down businesses, you've shut down schools. We're going through all these motions, but nobody's like, we're not all on the same team here. Nobody's doing their part.
I hear that concern, and it is one of the reasons why Gail and I are and the other members of the leadership are talking about you know, enforcement, making sure that people are wearing their masks, fines, and shutting down roads, and you know, whatever we need to do to make sure that people are only going out when absolutely necessary. So yeah, you're right. The problem is that people aren't taking this seriously, and as soon as they do take it seriously, I think things are going to get a lot better in this town. If there are no more questions, I think that we're going to wrap up this town hall. Thank you so much for participating, and thank you to Gail, our fantastic councilwoman, for all the hard work that she's done.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you've become a much better, somehow, yeah, you've become a much better politician than me very quickly. If I didn't know better, running for my job.
Watch your back.
I don't respond well to betrayal.
No.
I'm very pussy very quickly.
All right, so we're gonna do. Let's do that brings the second challenge to an end. So we're gonna do the draw really quickly. I know that we're let's do this, and then we'll kind of talk about wrapping it up, because I do want to kind of keep that 2 o'clock cutoff firm, because I already appreciate the time that you've given me. But let's do the draw challenge.
Can you tell us?
Yeah, so I've put one white and one gold. I mean, I'm sorry, one red and one gold go in to the pool. Now, if your main character is unhappy about the path that the fellowship has taken, you're going to say 1 red. If your main character actually wants the quest to fail, you're going to go 2 red, or you're going to say no stones. Okay. So 1 red if your main character is unhappy, 2 if they want the quest to fail, otherwise no stones. If you've entered that in, and I'll in a second do the, say 1, 2, 3. All right, so we've got 3 red stones going in.
Appreciate Lucas's optimism.
And,
Lucas has what he wants. I mean, the town is technically on shutdown, even if they're not paying attention to it.
And you get to run the press conferences.
Apparently.
Yeah, you got it.
and now, if as a player, do you think the fellowship did what was necessary to succeed at the challenge? Hold white if yes, or gold, or red if no. So if as a player you think the fellowship did what was necessary.
Can I think about it?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so red or white, or red or gold. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. So 2 gold, 2 red go in. All right, shake these up. Go to my resolution page so that we know. All right, so the first one, we have a red.
Uh-oh.
They're both red.
Oh.
So this means a character betrays or is betrayed by the fellowship and is lost, and we lose the challenge. So we need to decide who betrays or is betrayed. It could be a major character, it could be a minor character.
Seems like if we fail to quell unrest, then what happens is I get voted out of office. Like, it just does seem like it was my responsibility to do it, and I failed. I don't know if other people have a take.
I mean, there's a few ways that can happen, right? Like, people can just evacuate the city, or like leave. They can vote you out. They can kick me out. I can get fired. It's easier and quicker than having to vote out a council person. Depends on whether or not Gail betrays Lucas, I guess.
Right. I don't think she would do that. Nah, I think I got to take the hit for my community. It's my responsibility.
Yeah. So the community kind of looks at what's happening in the community, and you become to some extent the scapegoat for what has happened. Okay.
I mean, the amazing betrayal is if people like do a writing campaign for Lucas, and they're like, he seems really stable. He seems to know what he's doing. This Gail person like seemed calm and then got all riled. couldn't
Yeah,
handle.
so he wasn't the
Almost
chief of
2020.
police, but he gets to be a council member instead.
Sure.
Maybe it's something more like much
The
more
recall.
dramatic than that. Like somebody spray paints your windshield with "Pay my bills."
Yikes.
The town is really angry.
Yeah, I think that might be more interesting. Although this might start getting into something that might be more uncomfortable. We can talk about it, I guess. Instead of like just losing the character, that the character has to like lay low because they are getting death threats, right? Like this is the reality that we live in. That
Yeah,
that
she
this
gets
is not-
harassed and
Some kind of sustained harassment campaign. I was just saying, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And the positive version of this is the Parks and Rec version, where Leslie just gets voted out of office. The actual version of this is the death threats, the spray painted windows. I think that might be more realistic. I don't know if we want to go down that path though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, and then I mean, I could see that then kind of developing into a different type of relationship between Gail and Lucas, because she might be kind of calling upon Lucas to kind of help her deal with her new, now increasingly serious security threats that are happening around herself. So we have like a situation where Gail is removed from the council and now feels kind of increasingly under threat from the community. Lucas, perhaps, being kind of called into service to kind of help her with her kind of security types of issues. Perhaps he has a new future in front of him on the council. Lolly, what do you see as Grady's kind of outcome?
So I don't know. I think Grady in this space probably didn't have as much of an arc as I was anticipating in the beginning. I think that she's one of these people that is struggling with having education, but no real like social clout or position by which to affect change. She's just kind of like caught up in the current of what's happening in the town.
Yeah, I mean, how do you think Grady reacts to the fact that, I mean, of the people in the town, at least in terms of job situation, she's kind of okay, right?
Yeah,
Because
she's pretty well set up, but I think she probably is in my mind she's a bit more selfish. She's tired, she's anxious, she is working paycheck to paycheck. She probably has a hard time seeing the kind of the benefit of her position, the fact that she still is employed and still, she's childless. She doesn't have to worry about childcare.
Yeah. I mean, I think Cooper would probably come through this. He would muddle through it okay. I do wish we had had a chance to kind of work on that Grady relationship. I mean, that's kind of increasingly difficult, though. I think Grady would be increasingly despairing of like the possibility of a management job, because unfortunately the business she's looking at for the management job it's
collapsing.
Is on the ropes. So that would probably cause some despair from Grady. And I think Cooper kind of I think would be kind of muddling through it, no doubt, right? Whoever takes Gail's place on the council, I don't think would be I mean, there are no magic solutions here, so I think whoever kind of gets into that position is kind of is the next one on the firing line, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I kind of like that you played Cooper as pretty like unassuming, like kind of guileless. And it was Gray that was kind of the schmuck. And I like wonder if that changes, right? If Cooper becomes more cutthroat as time goes on. Like, in times of scarcity, people find themselves increasingly desperate and increasingly willing to do what it takes to protect their interests.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and Cooper is the kind of person who unfortunately has to start kind of doing these grisly equations of like, okay, yeah, if we remain open, my workers, probably some members of the public would be at increased risk, but he's probably doing some calculations as to some of that might be okay, and unfortunately that might lead to people getting sick and maybe even dying. But right there, I mean, I think people that are kind of in those kinds of positions, right, kind of get forced into these scenarios where they have to I mean, they're really kind of walking a tightrope trying to kind of balance the kind of humanitarian health safety side of things with also, I would say, to some extent humanitarian, but more on the kind of economic hiring, keeping people employed and all that type of thing. Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm curious if we could just say whoever was going to pick the next challenge, what would the next challenge have been? I'm just curious what we... I'm sorry?
Do you go to the Moth?
The Moth?
The Moth is a monthly storytelling slam in a bunch of cities. And one of the things they do is at the end, they bring up the people who didn't get picked to tell stories, and they all tell the first sentence of the story they would have told.
Ah, I like that.
I thought that's where you got it. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah. I'm just curious what the first sentence of the next part of the story is. Yeah.
Well, I think possibilities for me would be blame someone for our failures.
Right.
Like maybe we could find a new scapegoat, and not kind of hammer on the city council.
Yeah.
I
like that.
I mean, I was thinking that at some point, right? I mean, if we had delved more into the hospital situation and the get state-of-the-art facilities, maybe not state-of-the-art facilities, but I mean, you could have some type of challenge of if the equipment, hospital beds, etc., get used up, what does the community do about that?
I was really intrigued. I think this a little bit happened by accident, but Lucas presented numbers that showed the curve bending, and then Grady said nobody is practicing social distancing. So it's possible that one or both of those things are false, but it's actually really interesting if those are both true, in which case, like, somebody is wrong about the necessary amount of social distancing required to bend the curve. And there's something interesting to me, similar to what Lolly said at the beginning, which is like, can you succeed when you don't have your crack team of experts who respond to the situation perfectly? Can you muddle through to a solution?
Yeah. Well, Grady's perspective is probably really skewed because of where she works.
Mm-hmm.
So she's at a nexus of the community where people are constantly going. So from her perspective, she's just like, I see everybody.
It's also a question of like, what is the critical mass for affecting change, right? So do you need everybody to social distance, or do you just need a third of the population to social distance? My school, when we first started this, we didn't just cancel and go to digital. We were trying to just reduce the number of kids on campus, because the idea was just reduce the number of people who come into contact with you, and that will bend the curve. Obviously, we've not kept with that, but it is an interesting question about whether or not both of those things can be true.
Yeah, well, it becomes so hard to kind of determine, what the ultimate impact of social distancing is on the actual numbers that are coming out. So that that there are some people who would look at kind of improving situations and would say, oh, well, and also the situation where the most dire predictions have not come true. And some people would say, oh, see, we told you so. This was all just blown out of the water, and all this social distancing stuff really wasn't necessary to begin with. Whereas, those people who have been practicing social distancing are, obviously saying, well, that's maybe precisely why things are not as dire as what they are. But you know, you get like then people on like complete opposite ends of the spectrum that are kind of looking at this, and one side saying, oh yeah, the social distancing was the key factor, and the other saying, oh, that clearly the social distancing, we look at the figures, right, that we've blown it all out of proportion, and that social distancing isn't really wasn't really necessary to the extent that we were pushing it.
Yeah.
I'd be really curious in the like educational connection. What would that look like? What does it look like to do this with students?
Yeah, I would be curious, and I mean one of the things that one of the reasons why I thought it would be interesting to get kind of play this game with a kind of pandemic situation at the heart of it is that I play a lot of role-playing games, and during the time of the pandemic, I sometimes have introduced like the idea of like, oh, we'll bring a virus infection into the game, and that has often met with people saying no, that is not what we want to do, and you know they have, you know, rightly used the X card or kind of set that as a line in the game that you know that we're playing the game right, and we want to kind of avoid the kind of situation that's currently going on around us. But yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to you know kind of think about this with students, because I think I'm already seeing that, oh, you know, it certainly becomes a kind of springboard to kind of provoke all sorts of you know discussion and reflection on, you know, the world around us, right? It kind of gives us a fictional space to do that.
I think if I were to try this with my students as a biology teacher, I think some sort of element of the fantastic would be necessary. Because particularly middle school students tend to be obsessed with the correct answer. And so I think if we were to do this with 7th graders or 8th graders in this mundane setting, they would be very much focused on reproducing what they hear in the news and in the media, as opposed to playing with the characters. So I think putting it like making it the medieval plague or making it a future zombie outbreak would be enough to sort of kind of break that mold and free up some of their decisions.
Yeah, I think that was a really powerful moment in our game. And one of the things that I think students, we all struggle with is having to make choices, particularly in these games. And so that moment in which Grady turned the tables on Lucas, the way that you could have played that was to you got away with it, right? Like you could have ended the scene there. But the really powerful moment is that you did confess to Vivian, and that created this other kind of interaction. So you did create an accountability for yourself in a way that if I'm 18 years old and I gotten away with something, unless there's some outside force pressing me to confess, I don't know that I will confess. Like that's a learned social behavior, I think. So I don't know what.
I think I would, if I'm thinking about my kids, I think there's a huge range, and some of them would take really well to this, but I think enough of them would feel awkward or uncomfortable being asked to like role play or act that I think I would have to pick a game with a bunch more structure. Yeah. And the problem with that, I think in general, you know, I've only played a couple. So Robbie, I'd love your thoughts on this, but I think structure tends to either come from like a really strong GM, which I'm not, or are there games that themselves have just a bunch more structure in the rules?
Yeah, well, and what I would say is I think that there are varying degrees of structure that you can get in the rules of the game.
Okay.
I think what I find with students is that getting role play situations where they are trying to frame a scene and taking on these characters, that is something that with students you have to kind of build up to, and it's not something that you can expect like out of the box that they will do that. And I think one of the things you do then is, well, you know, one of the things you can do is if you have the ability to kind of think about this in terms of an entire year, you could do something kind of early on in the year, which gives them like a little baby steps towards it that would maybe build up to more kind of full, complete role-playing situations. I'm going to give you one concrete example. I have used the game Microscope in my English classes with ninth graders to kind of, and Microscope is all about kind of building a narrative. You kind of have a group, they decide the beginning point of a narrative and the end point of a narrative, and you kind of then can work between the beginning and end points to kind of think of, you know, different events that have happened between those 2 points. At one point, the game kind of can get you down to specific scenes where you would be framing a scene and that type of thing. And the first time I tried playing Microscope, it was clear that that scene level was something that the students were not equipped to do. So what I ended up doing is I had them play the game, but took the scene idea out of the game, except at the very end, I turned that into a writing assignment. I said, okay, now that you have all of these events that you've kind of created for this big history, let's talk a little bit about scenes. And instead of having them do the role play at that moment, I said, okay, you have created some characters here. Think about this on the more micro level of actually playing out a scene, and do a write up a few pages where you would kind of, you know, when I talk about dialogue and how in their writing, it's important at the beginning of this that you do some scene setting with an opening paragraph that would situate us, but also introduce a conflict and that type of thing. But then I think after having done that, maybe something like this would be much more doable, because it'd be like, oh, I could go back and you know, have them reflect on when they wrote up a scene and say, okay, now you're going to do this in a more kind of live, improvised situation, but kind of use those same skills that we've kind of talked about earlier.
I love that.
I mean, I think it might be possible to do it without that preceding step, but I think what you would need to do is say, okay, when you're framing a scene, you really need to kind of spell out step by step by step. You know, okay, you'd have to have a setting. You want to have a few sentences describing the setting, right? And you would really need to kind of, I mean, I think whereas, you know, we were much more kind of comfortable immediately falling into that. With the students, yeah, you would need to kind of handhold a little bit more. The other thing that I find with you know, like the ninth grade students, when it comes to role playing, they don't push it far enough, right? Like, you know, I think if I introduced this game to ninth graders, they would have no problem running through the 3 rounds really quickly. But that would be partly because they were not necessarily playing the game as it's supposed to be played, where you should get some kind of mileage out of those scenes to figure out what happens in them.
Yeah. How do you deal with the numbers? Like, you know, you have 20 students in a class.
Well, yeah. So with Microscope, that one worked pretty well, because, you know, I would kind of do it as a exercise in figuring out how narratives are put together and how narrative arcs get developed and things like that. So I do that kind of coming out of a discussion of the summer reading, and we kind of talk about how that narrative was put together. And then I say, okay, here's a game we're going to play, and the game is going to be about how do you build a narrative and how do you think about narrative arc and different kind of scales of time that might be going on, right? There are parts of the story that you kind of summarize and time moves very quickly, but there are also parts of the story where time gets kind of narrowed down and you're dealing with things more narrowly. And with that one, you know, I work through the steps of the game, and then I have them with this game, you play it with all these 3x5 cards, but they kind of get into their groups. And then I spend my class period largely kind of just circulating around the class between the different groups, kind of seeing what are the stories that they're coming up with and building.
Gotcha.
But you know, one of the in terms of my own work with these types of games in the classroom, I would say that most of these types of games are designed for small, intimate groups sitting around a table. And it certainly is something that requires a lot of kind of thought about, okay, I have a class of 20 students. That's a very, for this type of game, we're going to have to break up into groups, and you've got to then think about how you're going to scaffold that and kind of set that out for the students so that they have the kind of direction that they need. They know the steps that they need to follow. And because otherwise, yeah, it would be pure chaos. And you always have to, when this is going on, I always have to be aware in the kind of classroom when students are kind of straying. Usually they're straying because they don't understand what it is that they're supposed to be doing. So you have to be kind of active and kind of moving around to kind of keep the groups kind of focused and directed.
One of the reasons I asked what the third challenge would be is because we stopped 2 challenges in, fix the terrible side effect our treatment causes. As a teacher of literature, I'm curious, is that as far as we can imagine? And I think that would be the question that I'm teaching a novel that's about a zombie pandemic. And one of the questions is, well, what comes after this? Like, can you imagine a world that isn't just what we did do and isn't the world that we live in now? Like, and if you can imagine that future, then what are the steps that we need to take in order to get there? Who do you need to bring on board? How do you need to support people? How do you need to tamp down conspiracy theory or enliven it? Like, so I found this to be fantastic, and I found all of you to be fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. And Aaron, just so that I don't forget, what is the name of the book that you're teaching that's about the zombie?
Ling Ma's Severance.
Okay. Yeah.
It starts off with a woman who's employed at a publishing house, publishing Bibles that are imported from China, and an outbreak breaks out, and it's not a zombie novel like zombies. It's you wind up just going back to like getting into routines, and you don't break the routine, and you sort of start to waste away, and your body becomes, but you're still, and so you're effectively dead, but you keep setting the table, and you perpetually set the table for your home. The more action-y version of this novel is Colson Whitehead's Zone 1, which has like the standard violent like zombie tropes, but also these other nostalgia zombies essentially. Mm-hmm. But Ling Ma's is far more more mundane, like in a good way. Like this is exactly what we've experienced, these images of emptied out streets in New York, N95 masks being distributed to the corporations, like that kind of stuff. It's beautiful.
All right. Well, I may take a look at that. The zombie genre is one that I'm by no means a big fan of it, but I occasionally like my occasional like zombie movie or zombie narrative. I always feel like at the end of them, though, a lot of them, I guess it's part of the genre, the sense that, right, oh, we have settled things for now, but it's never completely settled, right? There's always this kind of sense that, right, things are kind of ongoing, and it's just, we are just awaiting the next outbreak of zombies, right?
Yeah. Well, I think we're seeing some of that now. When people talk about things going back to normal, and then there's people who are like, "What are you talking about? Things are never going back to normal." And
yeah. Well, and also the false claim that we've never been through something like this before, and it's like, no, there have been certainly. You do a little, looking back in history, there certainly have been all sorts of plagues and infections and things like that, right? I mean, it's something that you know, has been with us and will continue to be with us. So I'm just hoping that you know, one of my hopes with this pandemic is that hopefully we learn some lessons from it, because it actually could be worse than it actually is, right? And the next one could be worse than this one. So yeah, that hopefully we have some things that we can kind of you know, tuck away and kind of implement the next time it does happen, whether that be, you know, 10 years down the road, 50 years down the road, or whoever, right, kind of gets the next really big one.